Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm going to start just by providing an overview of Tzedek and the services that we provide through the small business program. And then we are going to go ahead with the presentation that we have prepared for today. So Tzedek is a nonprofit organization that has been around and serving individuals in Los Angeles for over 40 years. We provide services regardless of the individual's race, religion, ethnicity, or immigration status. And we have different programs available to serve our communities. But today in specific, we are going to focus on the services that we provide to our small business development project. Our project is basically focused and designed to help low to moderate income entrepreneurs and small business owners through different services. We have community presentations like these ones. We also have our small business legal academies, which are a combination of presentation by lawyers and then one-to-one consultations with attorneys. Besides that, we have guides and other free resources available on our website, and we also have direct client representation. For direct client representation, we focus on transactional legal matters. What that means is that we don't support in litigation issues. However, we can help small business owners with some other things. For example, with business structure and entity formation. If you're a small business owner and you think you are ready to, for example, to form an LLC, we can help you with that process. To review contracts. We also are seeing a lot of cases regarding commercial lease negotiations and just negotiation with landlords. We can help you with that too. With intellectual property, we can help you register a trademark or understand what is the best way to protect that intellectual property. Matters related to employment law and the difference between employees and independent contractors, and some other business law related matters. So we are here to help you, and we have, of course, some eligibility criteria because, as I said, we focus on helping low to moderate income entrepreneurs. The first thing that I do have to mention is that we do look into the individual's specific income and then the business sales and profits. All this information is being basically asked through our application. I will share the link to our application in the chat. And that's the first step to basically see if we can help you and assess whether you are eligible for these free legal services. So here is a link for the application. That's my email, and I'm going to include it also on the chat. And then all of the other resources that I mentioned that we have available are on our website. So you can also just go on our website and see the resources that we currently have available for you. It is a pleasure for me to introduce you today to Yusuf Dam. He's a partner at Paul Hastings, and he's one of our pro bono stars. He helped us with different presentations, and Paul Hastings is one of our pro bono partners. I'm going to start Yusuf to start. And before we start with the presentation, we do have to mention that the presentation today is provided for educational purposes. So if you have very specific questions regarding your legal matter or your business, we ask you to please reach out to us so you can get a specific legal assistance for your case. But today it's only provided, all the information is provided for educational purposes only. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to start sharing Yusuf's presentation now. Give me 1 second. Here is. Okay. Can you see it, Yusuf? And you are still on mute, so we cannot hear you.
Thank you. So hi, my name is Yusuf Dami. I'm a partner at Paul Hastings, and I work in the corporate department. As Nadia mentioned, I work with a number of different Tzedek clients and also a number of different speaking opportunities where I can talk to people usually about two things. One is setting up businesses, and two is often we think about contracts that businesses enter into. This is a little bit of in between, in the sense that it's something a lot of our small business owners have been asking for, which is a presentation on what to think about when they're planning to give their business or pass on their business to the next generation, whether it's with their will or in the context of some other type of handover from generation to generation. I think that What's true of all of our presentations is even more true here, which is that I don't think you can go and take what I teach you in the speech today and just go ahead and plan your business succession. I think what you should try to do is take note of the points that we're talking about and make a list of questions, make a list of items, and try to sign up for a pro bono attorney through Tzedek. An attorney should be able to guide you very well through each of these issues as they impact your own business. Because unlike setting up a business where you just do an LLC, you might use a form contract, you might make a few changes and go forward. Planning and succession planning is really tailored to your family. What's the current business that you have? Do you want to change the business form before you pass it to your family? What happens if you pass away without a will? Are there any tax issues you want to take care of? And so I think the thing to do is to walk through the different steps today, take stock, and if you want to come up with a succession planning or a succession plan, really come into Tzedek, find a pro bono attorney, which will help you with, and they ought to be able in 1 or 2 or 3 sessions really walk you through this carefully so that you tie the different pieces together. But if you go through, as we go through this, if you have questions, please feel free to write them. And Nadia can collect them and we can either break in and you can ask, or I can handle them at the end. But it's a small group, so we can be as informal or formal as you'd like. So big picture today, we're doing a presentation on succession planning. We're going to do an overview of the things you want to think about. Then we're going to think about 3 ways to inherit or pass along your business. We're going to think about inheritance tax considerations, and then we're going to talk about the effect of a death of a member or of an owner on a business. What happens if you don't take steps and you pass away with respect to your family? I think the bottom line in all of this is that you're going to want to spend time now putting together a plan, thinking about what is your business, what documents do you have, and what's your goal. That way you can go to an attorney and think about, how do I get my business into the hands of my son or my daughter or my grandnephew, whatever it might be. But without thinking about it ahead of time, it's really hard to put a plan into place. Why don't we go to the next slide? So what is a business succession plan? A plan is a document that decides who will inherit or take over your business upon your death or disability. To write a plan like this, you need to identify the ideal successor to take over the business and determine the best way to transfer ownership of your business. In some cases, couple might have a business which they sell to their children or their grandchildren. They might be the case that they simply allow the business to pass on through their will. It might be the case that it passes on after they pass away without the benefit of a will. All of these things will have a different impact on you, the grantor of the business or the seller of the business, and also the recipient. And you want to think about, what are your needs now? If you're selling the business but you need money until you retire, for instance, your needs will be different than if you are planning to only pass it on when you die. It's also the case that you may or may not want to have some retained interest in the company if you're not fully moving away or retiring, or you might want to collect passive income. All of these things are things you want to discuss not only with your current partners, whether they're your family or somebody else, but also with the people who are going to receive the business, so that everybody steps into the plan knowing what's expected of them, and that the documents are written down clearly and that there's no surprises. Next slide, please. So there's a few different ways to transfer. You can have wills, you can have a trust, or you can have what's called intestate succession. Those are the 3 primary ways to transfer the business. A will is, as you'd expect, you go to a lawyer and you grant a will, which is a formal document which indicates how you're going to give away all your property, including potentially your business. Intestate is what happens when you pass away without a will, and the laws of the state will dictate what happens to the business. You could also potentially set up a trust where the ownership of the trust passes to your next generation upon your death or disability. A key question to ask in all of this is, after I die or become disabled, do I want my property to go to the people I choose, or do I want the state of California to determine who's going to inherit my property? There are two ways to ensure that you get to determine who gets the property and that you get a hand in that rather than having the state step in. One is a will and one is a trust. And we're going to go into some of the small differences there. Option one is a will. If you have a will, your will allows you to determine who receives your interest in the business after you pass away, or potentially after you become, if it's a living will, if you become disabled as a result of an accident or illness. This is the more expensive way because it requires an heir to open a superior court proceeding and probate. Probate can be expensive. At the same time, it allows you to speak with a great deal of specificity about what happens to your business. Working with a lawyer can be a very functional way to get things done because the lawyer is used to passing along business. They're used to thinking about tax. They're used to thinking about generational issues. You know, what happens if one of your children is going to work at the business, one of your children isn't inclined to work at the business, somebody has some type of problem which might make them a bad recipient of an ownership interest, but you want to hold it in trust. They're all things that a lawyer can do, and potentially a pro bono lawyer could assist with as part of the planning. You can also have a trust, and if a trust owns all or a portion of your interests in the business or any of your property, and you become either you die or you become disabled, the property will go to the heirs that you name in that trust agreement without the need for an expensive or time-consuming probate process. This is a way of structuring your affairs that avoids probate. A trust can save people money in terms of the courts. That being said, without knowing your personal situation, we can't advise will versus trust. At the very least, it'd be helpful to talk to somebody on a consulting basis or one of the pro bono folks that Tzedek recommends to give you a sense of what the better path is for you, given the size of your business, the resources of your family, etc. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? So again, thinking about wills versus trusts versus interstate succession, California's law of interstate succession is as follows. Probate codes contain the rules on who will inherit your property if you are if you are dead or disabled, and if you're a California resident who dies without a valid will or trust. They're called the law of intestate succession, which just implies dying without a will. The estate of a married deceased person or a registered domestic partner is a specific issue. If you pass away and you're married or you have a domestic partner, the property will very likely go to your spouse or domestic partner, absent some type of arrangement that you have, either will or a marital arrangement before the marriage or during the marriage. Things will also go to your spouse or domestic partner if you don't have living relatives. The rules that divide property among the surviving, there are rules that will divide otherwise your property among your spouse, your partner, and others based on the California law. I think it's very likely that you're not going to want to simply let the law do this. It's very likely that you're going to want to have specific ways that you pass your business along. If you're single, the following heirs will inherit. If you have children, if you have parents, if you have siblings, they'll go next. Grandparents are to the state if there's no relatives found. Now, it's very likely that even if you don't have lineal family, you're going to want to give your or provide for your business to be taken by mentee, somebody in the community, not simply cheating, as it's called, to the state. And these are steps you'll want to take with the attorney to make sure that you're both doing the business filings, but also either the wills or trusts or other intestate preparation documents that are required. Next slide, please. So you've got to think about inheritance tax. It's a specific tax that occurs when you die and pass along property to a next generation. Inheritance tax is a tax issued on people who either own property in the state where they passed away, it's also called an estate tax, or the people who inherit the property from a residence of that state, called inheritance tax. California does not impose an inheritance tax. If you inherit properties, you won't have to pay a tax on the amount you inherited. The properties you inherited won't necessarily be considered income. For federal taxes, there's a $10 million exemption. The exemption is indexed to inflation. Only people who pass away with a significant estate, as discussed, will have these taxes. But I want to be clear, this is general information, not intended to be specific to your situation. There are a number of different ways in taxes and filings with respect to business matters where there can be loss as a result of passing business from hand to hand. There can be issues with your partners. There can be issues with who's allowed to hold your business. All these things are relevant, not just in the state law, the federal law regarding inheritance or wills, but the business laws and the contracts that you have with your partners, as well as those on file with the state. It's important for that reason that you try to think about this as sort of a multidisciplinary thing. You think about your lawyers, your inheritance lawyers, your business lawyers, and your tax lawyers. If you don't have significant means though, the Tzedek team is actually very well provided, very well situated to provide these to you because they have pro bono services from all the big law firms, people who do all these different services. Things that would otherwise be hard to pull together because you need 3 partners or 3 different lawyers, but Tzedek can help you do. And we can really help you in this stage of your planning. It's something that as COVID starts to hopefully wear off and we see people planning for what's next, we really want to help people get ahead of these issues because we see what happens when they're not able to do so. Next slide, please. So there's the effect of a member's death on a business under state law. We're focusing on LLCs because a lot of you will likely have business LLCs. Corporations, S Corps will have different results. The bottom line though is you're going to want to study your existing business documents with a lawyer and think about how those either should be modified or folded into your will so that your will and your personal business documents aren't in conflict with each other. If you have a business partner, if you're part of a multi-member LLC, it's even more important that you look at the business documents and look at the arrangements with your partners to make sure things will go as planned and that you have a clear communication plan with your partners. They know that should you become disabled, they'll be dealing with your nephew, they'll be dealing with your niece, they'll be dealing with your aunt, whoever's going to be dealing with your affairs. It's very important to kind of get ahead of these issues. So you've got a death of a member in a multi-member LLC. Here's what's going to happen. The member's disassociated from the LLC. In this case, the member's executor will end up exercising all of the member's rights to settle the estate, including the power the member had under the LLC agreement or the operating agreement. The operating agreement can also instruct what happens at the death of a member. This is why I want you to be careful if you're part of a multi-member LLC. Don't assume you can pass it along to your kids. Maybe at death, your counterparty, your partner has the ability to buy you out, to buy your estate out. Maybe something happens with respect to your share. You want to make sure you get ahead of that and you're prepared for it so that you're not passing along, you're not thinking you're passing something along to your kids, but it's something they can't legally hold. And if there's an issue with passing it, you can work with your partners and work with your lawyer to amend the agreement if possible and as appropriate to make your will and intestate agreement work. If you've got a single member LLC, I know a lot of our small business people do, here's what happens. If the sole member of a single member LLC dies, the LLC will dissolve unless the operating agreement allows for continuation and says how you determine the successor, or the successor's heirs or assignees elect to continue within 90 days. So it's important if you're doing a plan, maybe your LLC is easy and it's short. It provides that within 90 days, if you don't continue the business, that it dissolves. The thing is, if you pass away, your loved ones might not be inclined to act quickly. There's the grieving, the funeral, many other processes. People get overwhelmed. You want to give them an advantage of information so they know what to do if they're in this position. If they have to take steps, you might not have to put that into the will, but you might want to convey it to them in a letter or some other communication, either at your will or intestate or before you pass away. I think communication is crucial. The next generation that inherits the business needs to know what they're getting into. Similarly, if there's a limited partnership, if a partner dies, the partnership is dissolved unless the partnership agreement makes plans for succession. So you want to look at your partnership agreement and see what it says rather than relaying back on California law. Absent a specific partnership agreement, a California probate court might authorize the member's estate representative to continue as the partner. It may not. There might be a different step that ends up getting taken. If you want control of the process, you need to look at your documents and make sure they work with your will. A written partnership agreement can specify how surviving partners proceed. If you're setting up a business, think about that. If you have an old partnership agreement with other partners who may be aging, you should get together and try to think about how each of your next generations will run the business together as appropriate. if you've got a corporation, a death of a shareholder, it's considered really a separate legal entity from the owners. So a shareholder can instruct what should happen at the death in a shareholders agreement, in what's called a buy-sell agreement, or in the bylaws. If you die without that agreement, it's going to go through your estate plan, through your will, it's going to go intestate, and the holder is going to take the interest. It's not always clear whether they take the interest subject to the shareholders agreement that you might have with your partners. It's going to be important both to you and your partners that you think about that. You don't want the next generation to inherit something unclear where there's a lot of gray or murky area. It's going to cause more trouble for both of the new owners than it otherwise would if you are able to get ahead of this and plan. Next slide, please. So for additional resources, you can always go to Tzedek and sign up for a lawyer. I think what I'd recommend here, and then we can take questions, we can discuss anything really that people have time or interest for, is that this area of the law, it's not like forming a business where you pull stuff off of a LegalZoom or you go to Tzedek, you take the form and you do it yourself. It's something that involves overlapping sets of laws. And if you've got a business that was set up earlier, if you have a business that's been run on a handshake, there's a lot of different things that are going to have to get done so that you can successfully pass things along to the next generation. You've got to think about yourself, potentially your spouse, the people who are inheriting the business, the people who might expect to inherit it, who are not inheriting it potentially, and what the tax impact is on all of these people. You've also got to think about your own situation. If you were to become disabled, for instance, do you want your spouse to take care of the business on your behalf so that you and he or she can have some type of income? Or are you okay with the business going to the next generation, relying on them, to take care of you or not take care of you if you have enough money saved up? It's a lot of overlapping considerations. We could never go through all of them in a general presentation. I don't even think you can go through all of them in a 1-hour meeting with a Tzedek lawyer. I think you should plan for a 2-3-part meeting as you transfer even a complicated or even a not complicated business. I guess I'll pause there and see if people have started asking questions or if there's anything people want me to dig into now.
I don't see any questions on the chat, but we are a small group. So if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourselves. Yeah, I don't see any specific questions, just as I said, this presentation is going to be recorded and it will be posted on our website. So if people have questions after looking at it, please go ahead and just send your application through our site. For us, it's very important that people is prepared. We have seen, I will say, more cases that we expected during COVID from people that had unfortunate situations and they didn't know what to do after some of the owners of the business passed away. So that's why we wanted to put this presentation together. On that note, Joseph,
there's one thing there that we should talk about. You raise a great point, which is that it ties into another seminar we do, which is formation of business or incorporation. If a lot of people who are watching might have been running a business as a sole proprietorship, if that's the case, planning your estate, planning your succession plan might involve forming an LLC or forming a company to block the liability and to provide for a business that's separate from your personal affairs and can be handed out separately. A business that's contained in its own organization, whether it's an LLC or a partnership, is easier to deal with than something that's just part of your general personal assets as a non-specific entity. And as Nadia was saying, one of the unfortunate things we've seen is people dying without having had the ability to think this through and either leaving their family with liability or leaving them with an unclear sense of what to do. People having to spend more time and money when they're already grieving than they otherwise would. It also kind of includes the risk of intergenerational conflict because sometimes there's a misunderstanding where everybody thinks they're going to be inheriting the business, but really there's only a handful of people who have really been working at it. I think it's important to try to think about how you can leave the next generation pretty clear and concise instructions about how things will go forward. And again, I think the team at Tzedek is pretty uniquely situated to help. So it might be someone from the firm, it might be someone else.
Yeah, and I think on that note, it's very important that even like family members that are around the person that has the business, are aware of how the business is managed. We had a client, for example, that the partner passed away, and they didn't know if they had to continue paying like taxes regarding the LLC, like very specific questions that through the program we were able to find lawyers to connect them with. So just being able, I think, stepping away a little bit of the legal side, having documents ready and everything prepared, so if something unfortunate happens, the family can basically know what the steps to take forward.
Actually, that's a great point. I think part of what you're doing, if you set up a meeting with a lawyer, isn't even going to be legal planning. They might be used to thinking about all of these issues. It's about putting together a true plan. It's a business plan. The legal might be 15% of it. The legal might be the part that a lawyer helps you with the most. They should also be able to help you, though, think about, hey, your son is inheriting this company. Does he know where the bank account is? Your daughter is inheriting the company. Does she know where the credit card statements go? Does she know how to file the state filings? What needs to be done every year? How have you been reporting your taxes? Do you have an accountant? These are very important things when you're running a business that you might know. Are there any personal guarantees, like with your lease, so that when you die, you've passed the business on, but without a credit-worthy person to back it up, will the landlord be able to evict or take some other type of action? You want to think about all these different things. Which of your contracts might no longer be good if you yourself are no longer part of the business? What are you actually able to pass on and what are you not able to pass on? I think putting together a business plan with a legal overview is even more important than like writing a legal document. And that's why I don't think this is one that pulling a document off the internet really helps with. It's really talking to someone, digging into your business and thinking about it early. We've seen people, as Nadia was saying, not think about it early, and it ends up being a lot of loss in terms of business opportunity, money, red tape, etc.
Okay, well, I think that's it. I'm gonna stop the recording, and we are gonna